Um, I thought, Tim, maybe you could introduce Bradyn because you know him much better than I do.
Hey, Bradyn, it's Tim W3IPA on the Discord. Bradyn is very active in the the Meshtastic community here in Western Pennsylvania, he has set up quite a few mesh nodes in the Western Pennsylvania area. I believe more around the Pittsburgh, greater Pittsburgh area, um, setting them up on towers. So he's uh, should be a very great uh, Zoom meet here. I'll pass it off to him.
I appreciate the introduction, Tim, and I appreciate everyone for taking some time to come over and listen. Am I good to just start off?
Yep, go ahead.
All right, awesome. So I'm going to share my screen here, and let me get this presentation started. So it's going to be screen 2, share. And we'll make sure you guys can see this here in a second. Everybody should be seeing that now.
Yes, sir.
Am I heard okay? Is audio good too as well?
Audio is great.
All right, thank you so much. And I wanted to also show the layout view so I can do fancy stuff like this. All right, cool. So starting off, hello everyone. My name is Bradyn, KC3IJL. And as Tim had said, I've been kind of very active in the Meshtastic community for the better part of, I think it's coming up to about 2 years now. And I really wanted to, use the skill set that I had available to myself and also the resources that I had available to try and make this really interesting project and community flourish in our area. And I think that that's really happening, especially considering that this is now the second presentation I'm giving on this. And I've been very, very involved with it. And so I'm excited to talk to everybody here about it today. And I was looking at the camera of the room there, and I'm really excited to see there's a bunch of people here right now. So very, very cool. And I also want to say if there's ever a point in this presentation where I need to stop or I need to slow down or pause, or you guys have a question that's urgent, let's pause and maybe try to answer that quickly. Otherwise, I will allot some time towards the end of the presentation to answer everybody's questions as a whole. So moving forward, the first question I need to ask myself and all of you guys and also answer is, what the heck is Meshtastic? And I'm sure there's a few of you out of there that have probably heard of this, maybe a few of you that are already involved with it, which is really awesome if so. But today, I'm going to tell everybody about what it really is. And on the base level, it's just software. Bottom line, it's code that runs on a device. And above that, it's a platform. It's a kind of a way of communicating and maybe stretching your radio legs in a different way than you're used to. This is kind of a new way. It's a newer thing on the horizon. It's using some new technology and blending that in with the RF stuff that us amateurs are so used to. But above all else, it's a community, much like the amateur community is. It's an enormous group of people interested in the technology. But the difference is that this is including people who aren't amateurs as well. It's public. And that means that you open the doors up to a lot of genius minds to be working on at the same time. So we've seen some really incredible innovation with this project over the past just few years that I've been involved in it. And it's only existed for about 5. So that being said, I'm going to move forward here and just touch upon a couple vocabulary words that I'm going to speak about in this presentation. And I just want you guys to be aware of what they are and what they mean. So that way, if I say them, it's not super confusing. And the first word I'm going to use is node. And that's basically any device that's using Meshtastic. A node is just some device that can communicate on the Meshtastic network in some way or another. And to do that, you have to be running the Meshtastic software. Then we have something called a hop. A hop is what happens when a node rebroadcasts a message that it receives. And I'm going to touch upon that a little closer later because that is what really makes Meshtastic interesting. It's the bread and butter of what makes it work well. Then we have something called a client, which is a mode that your Meshtastic node can be in. And it's the standard, it's the default mode in which Meshtastic operates. Client is probably the best for most people to use until you get more acquainted with how Meshtastic works. And then you can move on to some different nodes should the environment suit it well. And an example of a situation where an environment might suit it well is a router, which is another mode. And this is effectively this Meshtastic equivalent of a repeater, which I'm sure everybody here is familiar with that. This is a device that is normally placed in a really high altitude location with a lot of visibility, tops of mountains, on tops of towers. These are the devices that are the backbone of the Meshtastic network. And these are the devices that make sure that everybody can communicate over really long distances, especially given our very unique geography in Pennsylvania. So this is a little diagram here, which kind of explains the hopping that Meshtastic does. First of all, I want to circle this LoRa. LoRa is a way of sending data over RF. It's just a protocol, much like Pactor or FT8. Anything like that is just another protocol. LoRa is a protocol that can be used to send very lightweight, very fast messages back and forth. And what Meshtastic does is it leverages the LoRa protocol and then allows us to basically send out a message. That message can be sent out by this device here. And this Bluetooth symbol is indicating that this Meshtastic node right here is connected via Bluetooth to this phone. And that's just the device that you use to interface with the Meshtastic. Down here is an example of a device that doesn't require a cell phone. It's standalone. It's got its own built-in keyboard. So that means you can have like text messaging right there on the device itself, kind of like a BlackBerry. So let's imagine that this first node here sends out a message and that gets broadcast outward and it gets heard by this device and it also gets heard by this device. Now this connection between these two is direct. They can hear each other immediately. They are within the RF vicinity of each other. So therefore, this other device gets that message instantaneously and it pops up on this other user's phone here. Now, let's say, for example, we want to communicate with a device that's not directly in our RF line of sight. So let's take this one, for example, which received the message as well. Well, since it received the message, it's going to rebroadcast it a certain number of times. So this one rebroadcasts, and then this one rebroadcasts it again. And then maybe this one rebroadcasts it once more, until finally it arrives at a destination. Maybe it's the intended one, maybe it's not. It depends on how you're communicating using Meshtastic. But that's what's really cool about this is that these devices all can hop between each other and allow you to exceed the normal range that you might have just in RF line of sight kind of situation. With that said, we're often able to get contacts using Meshtastic in the Pennsylvania geography exceeding sometimes 100 miles as long as the infrastructure is there. And that infrastructure might be something like a router node on a tower, or it could be an internet-based gateway. Those exist too in what we do, but we really try to do RF first. So that's kind of what my role is in this, is I've been putting these nodes in very high profile locations so that we can make sure that the RF backbone works. Because that's another thing that's really cool about Meshtastic, is it usually works when the lights are off and the internet is down. So it could be used in a lot of situations as a backup communications medium. But right now, we kind of just use it for fun. But it definitely has some usefulness in that regard. Does that make sense? I don't mean to probe the audience for questions at this point, but stop me if this isn't making sense. I have one more slide here to kind of further explain how this hopping thing works. And I'm going to move myself out of the way a little bit here. So let's say that this is, I don't know who this is. He doesn't seem to have a name. So this guy, he says, tell Sue I said hi and relay 3 times. Now that relay 3 times is him saying 3 hops. So this person up here hears it, and she got it at 1.3 dB of signal to noise ratio. That's not really important information, but we're using this metric to understand how it decides how to just rebroadcast. So she repeats it, and she went and subtracted one of those hops. So now she says hop 2 times. So since she's rebroadcasting, she subtracts a hop, which tells everybody else, hey, this message has already been rebroadcast once so far. Now this guy hears it, but he hears it at plus 7.5 dB of noise, signal noise ratio. So he's going to be like, that's really loud. I'm going to wait to rebroadcast this because maybe a node that's further away will hear it too. And it might be better for that long distance node to do the rebroadcast instead, to make that message reach further. So sure enough, this guy up here hears it at negative 12.7 dB of signal to noise ratio, and he barely hears it. So he's going to repeat that message immediately. And that's basically how we prioritize the mesh rebroadcasting. It's a way that we make sure that the network doesn't get too congested. And since he's rebroadcasting it, subtracts one of those hops. So now he says 1 hop left. And looks like we got this woman over here who may be the intended destination. She receives it at plus 2.1, and she then sends back a acknowledgement. ACK is kind of how we abbreviate that. So she's going to send that back through the network, and hopefully it reaches our original transmitter over here, and then that will give him an indication that his message made it to the intended destination. Those sometimes get through, those acknowledgements do. Other times they don't. It all depends on the busyness of the network. Now, for those of you who might be interested in getting involved in more Meshtastic stuff, and maybe some of you are the creative type and have 3D printers, these are some devices that you can 3D print at home. All you need is a little bit of hardware, which I have an example piece of hardware here, which I'll show you in better detail later. And I also have a couple examples of these devices sitting right here on my desk. But moving on, my point is that these devices are incredibly cheap to get into. You can 3D print these enclosures or buy pre-made 3D printed boxes online for very, very cheap on websites like Etsy. I just realized my head's blocking this picture over here of this nice BlackBerry looking one. This is, again, one of those completely self-contained Meshtastic devices that has a built-in keyboard, and you can do that with it. For example, this one here, this Sense Cap one, this one also works just like a node connected to your phone. I have one sitting right here. But the real big benefit about these little guys is just how compact they are. But they have built-in GPS too. So these can be used as a tracking device for maybe your pet dog, or you could put this on a person, or you could put it on your luggage or your backpack and keep track of where that is. Because that's another thing that Meshtastic does, is send GPS coordinates across the network too, in addition to the text messaging. Now that's optional. You don't have to share your location if you don't want to, but it's another useful feature that's built right into the protocol. So moving on to some of the hardware, these are some examples of devices that exist already to use with Meshtastic almost right out of the box in most cases. Right here is what we call the Heltec V3. This one's pretty ubiquitous in the Meshtastic community. This board here costs less than 30 bucks on Amazon, and it includes an antenna, and you can just put the firmware on it with a USB right on your laptop. It's very, very simple to use. And it also includes a little JST dongle to plug in a lithium-ion battery. This right here is a RAK, R-A-K is the brand name, 4631 module. These guys are great for routers or things that are going to be in remote locations or devices being powered off of solar, because they have built-in solar connectivity and they can self-charge a lithium-ion cell on their own. And these things sip energy. They're very, very power efficient, so they work well in solar situations. And here is another example of a solar device, but this one is ready-made. This is made by a company called Seed Studio, and you can buy this for about 120 bucks. And it's a self-contained unit that can just be mounted to a pole somewhere, set and forget. So that's one of the really cool things, is like we've got a lot of innovation lately and a lot of new companies jumping into the game. So you could join this without doing any tinkering or doing as much tinkering as you want. There's a lot of different pathways that people can get involved from this. And that's kind of why I'm talking to you guys, so I can give you these options and maybe at the end answer some of your questions about how to get involved. So some of you might be wondering, well, how does Meshtastic operate in the RF spectrum? And that's a very good question. And it runs in the ISM band, which is around 902 to 928 megahertz. Now, this is an unlicensed band. There are benefits to being a licensed amateur in this band. I think the EIRP limit is 10 watts if you're amateur. But that's something I don't even think I mentioned yet, is that these Meshtastic devices, like the one I have in my hand here, and a lot of the ones that I showed you on the previous page, out of the box, most of them run at about 22 dBm, which equates to around 100 milliwatts of RF power. And even with that extremely low power, the LoRa protocol allows us to make extremely long range contacts. The LoRa protocol is very, very, very good at noise rejection. And I've seen contacts personally. I've stood at the tops of mountains with a Meshtastic node and seen them as far as 120 miles. That's direct. At 900 megahertz, that's unheard of. That's really impressive performance. And there's some people that have some even further contacts that are in a little less noisy environments. I think someone holds the record at around 180 miles or something like that. It's outrageous. Now, a little bit about what Meshtastic does on the back end whenever it's communicating back and forth is it's encrypted. The nodes are able to communicate with each other with predefined encryption keys. And for those of you who know a little bit about how encryption keys work, it's just a simple key pair. It's like AES 128 or something like that. And each node has a unique key, which allows you to validate that it is who it says it is. You don't really need to know much about this, but the one thing to understand is that your messages that you send across the network are generally pretty secure. There actually was a lot of communication about that recently at a well-known hacker convention a few months ago where someone managed to break the encryption. But that's getting fixed. And despite that, this isn't something that you would want to use for information critical use anyway, but it is good to know that the information that you send over it that's not over the default public channels are, safe from prying eyes for the most part. So if you're, for example, you wanted to have all of your kids carry one of these tracking devices with them while they're away at school, no one's going to be spying on the location of your children over Meshtastic. That would be ridiculous. But regardless, it's encrypted data anyway, as long as you set up your own private channels. But that's another benefit to it, is that you can have those private channels and use the existing infrastructure, because the Meshtastic mesh network does not need to know your encryption key in order to rebroadcast. So even though encrypted data can be sent over the network, it doesn't need to be decoded in order for it to be rebroadcast. And with that said, I mentioned earlier about the added benefit of being an amateur. As a lot of us, I think, know, that we can't encrypt our data if we are licensed amateurs and using amateur spectrum. And that's one of the reasons we're in the ISM band, and this is a public project. At only 100 milliwatts, we actually are far below the maximum power limit of 1 watt, where encryption would need to be removed. Now, for those of you getting involved with this, you might notice that the Meshtastic system has amateur built in. And if you flip that tick box for licensed amateur, it actually won't let you use the standard Meshtastic network that we have around us, because it will pull encryption in order to give you the added power levels that you could use with amateur, up to 10 watts, like I mentioned earlier. But generally speaking, there's not a whole lot of benefit to that. We're able to get such long range contacts as long as we have line of sight with these devices, that the higher power doesn't really benefit you much. You might be able to squeeze a mile or two extra out of it, and maybe that matters in your situation. But generally, we do not use the full power legal limits with Meshtastic. Everybody's usually using 100 milliwatts just fine. And I think for those of you who do get involved with this, you'll find that it's perfectly adequate for what we do with it. So here's a quick little how-to. Using Meshtastic is pretty easy. It's designed to be easy. We want a lot of public people using it. What it's doing in the background is, you don't have to worry about it. But all you need to get started is one of these Meshtastic capable devices like I talked about earlier. Generally, you need a cell phone, Android or Apple. Both of them work. They have a official Meshtastic app in the app stores that you can download. And then you need some other nodes to communicate with. And that's the part that I have been trying to facilitate by putting in these nodes on high towers and stuff like that so that the other nodes that are mountains away from you can communicate with you over the Meshtastic network. And yep, that's all you need there. I think I had some more to say there, but I lost my notes. So we'll just move forward. But in some cases, you don't need a phone at all. These are some examples of devices that are totally built in. This one here, like I said before, could be used for just tracking only. You don't have to connect it to a phone, but if you do, then you'll gain that messaging functionality. But these two on the left, they have built-in keyboards, and this one in the middle has built-in GPS too. So this is a full-fledged like in your hand, in your palm, Meshtastic device, full featured, without a necessarily connected Bluetooth phone. However, it does have built-in Bluetooth anyway, so if you wanted to use a phone with this device, you could. So I want to give you guys a few use cases, and it looks like my animation's screwed up, so pay no attention. For starters, it could be used for off-grid, decentralized, and private communication. It's one of those things that is free for the public and requires no paid plan. So, you don't need a cell phone plan to use this. It works on its own infrastructure. But that's also where you guys come in, because the more nodes that we have, the better the system works. It could be used for strategic location tracking of field operatives or equipment. I personally use Meshtastic and in combination with an application called ATAC. ATAC is Android Tactical Awareness Kit, and it actually was a US government project before it was open sourced. But it's a very, very powerful tool that can leverage the Meshtastic protocol to disseminate information to people in the field with a very very powerful application on an Android device. And I use this at the annual air show at the Latrobe Arnold Palmer Airport, where myself and the Westmoreland County Emergency Amateur Radio Service provide volunteer communications across the fields. And I put one of these tracking devices on all of our operatives that move around, and that gives me a live feed of exactly where all of my people in the field are, which is super handy for whenever, we need to dispatch. You can use this for weather or other conditions reporting. The Meshtastic network is commonly used actually for remote monitoring of data. So some people might have let's say, a remote access gate to their driveway, and they want to be able to communicate long range with that to see if it's open or closed, or maybe even open or close it remotely. Some people are using it for temperature monitoring, humidity, air quality. There's even, I think, a radioactivity sensor, like a Geiger counter type of sensor that you can put into the Meshtastic network, and that will allow you to see that stuff remotely too, which is really neat. Remote sensor telemetry, which is just adding on to exactly what I was just talking about. There's a whole multitude of different sensors that you could use, and there's tons that are pre-made and ready to go. So depending on how much you want to tinker, you could, spend a couple bucks and have somebody else give you the product, or you could play with it yourself and see how it works, because you can decide what you do with Meshtastic in the end. This is, I think, my second or last slide. This is a little bit about WPA Mesh. This is the thing that I've been working on. And WPA Mesh is just a community of people, and our mission is to coordinate the Meshtastic community, much like the amateur community gets coordinated with repeaters and such. We're here for help. We're here to make sure that people get their questions answered and they can join the community as easily as possible. And it's growing day by day. And we've got lots of new people joining all the time that are very, very bright and doing some really interesting projects. I think someone up near you, is it Tim? Are you the one that launched the balloon, or is that somebody else?
Yeah, that was me.
That is you. Okay, so you launched he launched these two Meshtastic balloons up and they went south and eastern down towards Maryland, and we lost connection to them out that way. But when they were in the air, we were able to see for hundreds and hundreds of miles the people that we could get in touch with those, which was really cool. I love that experiment, and I hope that we can continue to do stuff like that. But our community is growing day by day, and I invite you guys to visit us at wpamesh.net, where I have links to our PGH Mesh, that's Pittsburgh Mesh Discord, as well as our Facebook group, if that's more your style. But if you want to research more about Meshtastic, there's plenty of resources online. For example, YouTube. Some two channels I would recommend is the Comms channel and Ham Radio Crash Course. I would also suggest checking out Reddit. There's lots of very helpful people there on r/Meshtastic. And this QR code right here will take you directly to the Meshtastic Discord server if that's more your thing. And that is the end of my presentation. I'll leave this up for anybody that wants this information. And at this point, I will take questions for anybody that has them.
What a tremendous presentation. Let's give Bradyn a hand.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Bradyn, I hope maybe you can get involved with Hamvention. They could use a really nice presenter like this that is so professional. What do you do for a living, Bradyn? I mean, you're smooth.
I really appreciate that. I get that skill from a couple of places. For one thing, I started out in my teenage years DJing. So I get that from like doing emceeing at weddings and stuff like that. And then in college, I really got out of my shell, and I think on my LinkedIn page I have my professor in college that was teaching us like public speaking, like commemorated me on my LinkedIn page or something for my public speaking. So I really appreciate those compliments. That's really nice. This is something that I take nicely. But day by day, you might notice I'm in a hotel. I travel for a living, and I'm a controls engineer. So I work on conveyor belts and robotics, mostly in the logistics sector, like UPS, Amazon, Target, Walmart, things like that. Right now, I'm working for the United States Postal Service in St. Louis.
Nice. Very nice. Questions for Bradyn? This was recorded, by the way. If you're like me, this was like drinking from a fire hose, right? And you want to watch it again. Corey is going to put this up on the website. So, and you can pass around to others that weren't here. They can watch this and get in touch with Bradyn. Go ahead, Art.
Yes, Bradyn, thank you for the presentation. Super.
My pleasure.
My question is I've been hearing about mesh. We had a presentation here once before, and this is just mind-bending of what you can do to it. I've also know that the amateurs use a mesh network for using like emergency stuff and things like that. Is this, and I know that it's Arden, ARDEN, maybe? Is mesh? Is it all the same? Would it interface with those? I'm at a loss.
No, it does not. Meshtastic is its own entity. It's its own thing. I don't believe it has any sort of interface with the Arden network, but there's no reason it can't. There's plenty of people that are taking Meshtastic and what it does and making it merge with other existing technologies. I think there's even some people working on getting it integrated with a PRS, for example. But there's no reason it couldn't. On the back end, it uses something called MQTT to go over, if you wanted to go over the internet, which is something that we utilize heavily in the PGH mesh and the WPA mesh in general to get mesh networking kind of in those valleys where it's really hard to get RF anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Bradyn?
Hey, Braden, Dale, KE3SV out of Zillionople. I've been on the network here for about a year now, working it, and it's been a lot of just local down to Cranberry. And boy, something just clicked here about 2 or 3 weeks back that now I'm getting signals all the way out to Seven Springs, which is really neat. So I do have my hop set at 5, and I suggest that for anybody that's just starting out. That way you can get a little further out than what you normally get. But man, what clicked here, other than the Western PA mesh maybe taking place? Because I can just, it's really neat, the map. You can see it going all the way out through Greensburg and then out to Seven Springs there.
Yeah, very recently there was somebody, I believe in Cranberry, that put up a high profile node, and that node was able to see into some of the core ones. I don't know exactly what the trace is. I could actually try to log in right now and check if you guys wanted to join me on a quick little web journey. We can try to figure out exactly what's going on. But it does seem like somebody put up a node up there, and that is what's getting you through. But that's the hopping nature. You seeing all the way over to Seven Springs is, exactly what's special about what we're doing. And this is a live map I'm sharing with you now of these are nodes that are witnessed by our MQTT server. And it does look like we have somebody right here in Cranberry here, K3 BTM base maybe. Could be one of these nodes. Oh, look at this one. Stick VFC is able to see Apollo. And Apollo, see all these lines out here? That's a
Yeah.
node that I installed on a tower. It's about 200 feet up. And that one sees really, really far. Apollo is arguably our most core router node. So I think that's your ticket right there. It was probably the Stick VFC. What you can do is you can do a trace route to Apollo, or you could do a trace route to other nodes and find out who you're hopping through, and that can help you figure out where
Yeah,
it
on
came from.
my phone, the trace route doesn't seem to work all the time. It only works for like a 2 or 3 hop,
Yeah, it's
and
a
that's
low
about it.
priority packet, so that it kind of
Ah,
gets dismissed if the network's busy. It's best to try it like late in the evening when not too many people are on the network.
okay. But yeah, it's been really great. And it's an easy thing to set up and use. So I noticed a lot of the hamvention events and stuff like that. People were using it in the community, just walking around. Even up at the Butler Ham Fest there, I was looking at all the nodes, and I followed it down to the Westmoreland group that had their radios set up there from Greensburg and stuff.
Oh,
So,
that's my club. So I'm
oh,
on the board of
okay,
directors there, the WEARS, Wares.
yeah. So, but anyhow, it's been a fun thing to do, just something else that, it's not really, like you say, amateur related. You can give it to your family because there's no license needed and
Yep.
just have fun. But, I have the LilyGo T Echo is what I'm using for the base station for home here and for just walking around and stuff. And my carry around is SV2. So, but anyhow,
Very
it'd be
good.
nice to we need something to get more north now, up to Hermitage. I get 1 or 2 up there, I see, but we need to get further north now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So maybe you can help with that. Maybe you got some friends up there that can put something up.
just stand by, because if Apollo at 200 feet works really good, Tim, W3IPA is going to get the W3JTV up on top of the Keel Ridge Tower, and that'll be at about 200 feet. And that's going to be your ticket. That's our goal is to have more lines than Apollo.
That would be great if you could. It's also going to be hugely beneficial if that site can see this tower, but
Right,
given its height, it's hard not to see it.
right.
And I'll give you a quick tip right here. If you go to site.meshtastic.org, this is a radio propagation tool that you can use to figure out exactly what your performance might be. So I can, for example, I know I'm going to have a tower up here soon. So I can center map on transmitter, set with map, click. Right there, we'll say that there's a transmitter there, and we'll say that it's 20 meters above ground. And I can run this simulation, and this will generate me a map that shows me what the potential performance is of that site. So if you guys are considering putting something up, you can use this tool to figure out if it's worth it, or who you can and cannot see. But we can
All
see
right,
here.
well, let's just go ahead and do it. Let's go to Hermitage.
Do you have the coordinates, or?
Well, I can give you a real close shot on the
Okay.
map.
All
So
right.
go to Hermitage, Pennsylvania. And then it's US 62. So come down US 62,
Not super
almost
familiar.
you're
There's
Go
Zelienopo
yep, go west,
west.
go west, and then north, 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 north. Okay, you keep going, north.
Past Newcastle.
Almost above 80.
Yes, past north, past Newcastle, past New Wilmington. Keep going.
Ah,
All
there
right.
it is.
Yes. So US 62 Hermitage. All right. Zoom in there a little bit. Okay. You see, all right, stop. Oh, stop right there. All right, right there. You see South Keel Ridge Road, right just to the center right. South Keel Ridge Road and US 62. 62. Come to the golf
I
course.
see it.
Come to the golf course. You see those power lines that keep going? Your
Right
mouse
here.
is almost those power lines. Oh, so come up to US 62 where those power lines are. All right. And then go right that building that's right next to the power lines, right next to the power lines.
Ah,
That
looks like
building
you
where
guys
there's that
W3LIF repeater.
Nope, 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 nope.
It's on the left.
Go- Building, build it right there. That building, that little building.
right.
Oop, you right there, right there. That's it.
All right. So we'll put a marker on there.
200 feet, so 65 meters.
All right, 65 meters. And I like to go on the receiver side, and I like to say, oh, first of all, we're going to have antenna gain, probably about 5 dB. And then I like to go on the receiver side and say that our height AGL is at least 3 meters. So that's assuming, whoever is receiving this is either on top of their car or maybe on top of the second floor of their house. So I'll run that simulation, and this is only going to do it, I think, for, it's only going to do it for, oh my goodness. Oh, wow.
That's what I like to hear. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. That
How about that?
is a monster.
There we go.
That is impressive.
Yeah,
I want to,
W3IPA is gonna lead us through that.
I'm going to run that again with a 75 kilometer radius. We're going to see what that looks like now. That's an impressive sight. I can already tell. So if you guys can make that happen, that's excellent. Tremendous.
Yep. We're committed to doing that.
Excellent.
That's going to be nice for Western Pennsylvania. And
Yeah.
give good coverage up to Erie, I think.
Yeah. One tip I want to give though, because 65 meters is pretty high. You want this to be maintainable at least annually. The firmware on these devices updates pretty frequently, and with that said, you can easily get behind the curve if you're not careful. Oh yeah, that's an excellent sight. It doesn't look like it gets out too well, but that could change based on the altitude of the receiver. So this is assuming that the receiver is only 3 meters above the ground. There's a good chance this could see Apollo. I could do another survey with some different software and find out if that's true or not.
But Bruce, you had a question too. I didn't want to usurp Bruce's question.
Bradyn, I know your Discord server is pretty well populated. You got a lot of people on there. I was wondering if you had any dedicated user groups or clubs or anything for your community yet.
Nope, not really. It's the online community right now. Nothing in person otherwise. The PGH mesh kind of merges with WPA mesh. It's kind of the same thing. I think WPA mesh can be bigger than the Pittsburgh mesh. That's kind of why it's named the way it is. But we're in cahoots for sure. So that's honestly the best resource I have for you in this area is the PGH mesh Discord. Otherwise, There is the WPA Mesh Facebook, but it's not nearly as active. The Discord, if you know how to use it, is an excellent resource.
Any other questions for Bradyn? Bradyn, thank you so much for taking time. You're on the road in St. Louis. Geez, I really appreciate this.
Of course.
And I know I speak on behalf of the Mercer County Amateur Radio Club. We're truly committed to pursuing this technology, and with W3IPA's guidance and the rest of the club members here, we're really looking forward to participating. So thank you. Have a safe trip out there. And if you ever get into the Hermitage Sharon area, we'd certainly like to give you a tour of the site, and we hope to be up and running here soon. So again, thank you, Bradyn.
Absolutely. And I'll open up a communications channel with Tim. That way we can stay connected about this stuff. And if that opportunity arises, then let's do it.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks again. And it's time for the 50-50, Mike.
All right. Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you, Bradyn.